Hello, good afternoon again, Team Edwards. I'm Colonel Gordon. I'm here today with Chief Ward Swanigan again, and also Master Sergeant Nielsen sitting on the side here helping to read questions. So today, what we wanted to do is just kind of give folks a quick status update where we are with the base, what's going on with respect to installation command directives, and because there's been a couple of changes that have happened here in about the last week or so, and we wanted to make sure that we just put a little bit of a voice to what those Word documents actually mean. So big picture, like if I could zoom all the way out and try to describe kind of where we are at. Right about the August and September timeframe was the directive for vaccinations that came down from POTUS as passed down through SecDef and then out to the normal command authorities beyond there. In the intervening time between then and now, there were established dates for vaccination mandates. And then on the back end of that, the one piece that we were kind of waiting on was, hey, how do we actually go through the process of getting a religious or a medical exemption, especially for the civilian side? We got some information about that with respect to the military side, and that all happened, September, October timeframe, and so we've been kind of working through that aspect of it. But the one piece that we were missing was specifically, what do we do for our civilian teammates that are trying to seek a religious or a medical exemption? We finally got that guidance not that long ago, and it took a little bit of time to kind of read through it and to be able to understand the process and have a lot of discussions back and forth with senior leadership and GIA and SG and a whole bunch of other really, really smart functional areas. But that is the guidance that got released to the base earlier this week. And so what I wanted to do is just kind of step people through this so that they understand kind of where we're at and kind of what the expectations are going forward. So for one, you'll see in there essentially two different forms. One form is the 3176, and that one has to deal with medical. And so I'll stop there. I'll just kind of describe the medical one before heading on to the religious accommodation one. On the medical form, and this is specific for civilians, what they're asking there is, one, there's a part on that form that the civilian employee actually fills out. And then there's an expectation that you would take that form to your medical provider, downtown in this particular case, to be able to fill in their part of, their viewpoint, if you will, on whatever medical condition that you might have and how that might be limiting from the standpoint of receiving the vaccine. So on the medical form, the 3176, that actually requires two different signatures on that, one from the employee and then the other one from their medical provider. That information is then brought to the supervisor that ultimately gets uploaded into the system that gets processed, and it gets a little bit further down track. But really, that's the part of the medical one. It's a form. It's a 3176. You fill out one. Your medical provider fills out the other aspect of that form, and then ultimately that's uploaded into the system going forward from there. There's some wording in there that talks about you can use any other type of form or documentation that you would like, just so long as you answer the questions that are asked. For sake of ease, the recommendation, you don't have to do it, but the recommendation is that you just use the 3176, and that way we know that all the information that was requested from the U.S. government is actually uploaded onto that. So that's on the medical side. On the religious side, that form is called the 3177. And for that one, it essentially reads like a questionnaire that you essentially give to yourself. And it talks about, the sincerity of the belief, why you hold the belief, those sorts of things. It's a series of questions that are on there. But for the religious form, and this one's a bit different than the medical one, on the religious form, the 3177, that is something that you essentially fill out for yourself. If you would like, it's not required, but it's optional. But if you believe it adds to the strength of the package that you're going to submit, you can also get a statement from your clergy that then provide a little bit more background and information as to why you hold this belief, why it's important to honor that, values, etc. But it's not required. That one is also, so you fill out that particular form, you bring that back, that also gets uploaded into the system such that it can begin its processing pathway from there. So there's a 3176 form, and then there's a 3177 form. The 76 is for medical, the 3177 is for religious. Essentially, either one of those two forms, what the installation command directive asks is that you complete those forms and you you basically hand them to your supervisor, and you do that by 22 December. So from here forward, roughly a little over a month from now. And this is kind of in response to, General Higer often talks a lot about the urgency, professionalism, and then that last little piece about the compassion piece. We understand. We're in a tough spot, quite frankly, as a country with respect to the pandemic. We do have orders as passed from POTUS via SecDef down through our command chain all the way down to Edwards Air Force Base. And so we have a responsibility with which to abide by the order. But then we also have a responsibility with which to treat all of our employees very fairly. And so that's some of the guidance that you'll see now in the ICDs in terms of making sure that people have sufficient time with which to go get this done. So the next step after that, again, really all the ICD is asking is just do those things, right? Do the 3176 for medical, do the 3177 for religious, submit that to your supervisor by 22 December, 14 January, everything gets uploaded into the system to begin processing, right? No later than. Plenty of time with which to just go a little slow, pump the brakes, and just to get people kind of into the groove in terms of what needs to happen. What happens from that point forward is somewhat still to be determined, but let me at least give you kind of the structure of how things were laid out. So that gets uploaded to a system that is processed up at Air Force Materiel Command that then makes sure that the package is complete, no missing documents, it's a valid package. They're not trying to adjudicate whether or not it should be approved or not disapproved. I mean, all they're looking at, quite frankly, is just to make sure is everything there, right? Everything that we ask for, is it a complete package? And if it's not there, there'll be some back and forth just to make sure that information is uploaded correctly. From that point forward, it's going to get revectored down to what's called a exemption response team. And their whole point is to review the packages and ultimately to make a recommendation to the approval authority, which will be held at the installation level. So that will be down here at the Edwards Air Force Base. There is a process in there for appeals. That still has yet to be fully formed in terms of what information would be needed for an appeal to be able to go forward. But I guess what I'm trying to relay is that this is a very, very deliberate process that is not going to be something that your supervisor directly holds. It's going to be something that's adjudicated at much, much higher command levels to make sure that it's got the right set of eyeballs looking at it to make sure that we've done everything that we need to do. So again, I'll pause there. Chief, any other kind of thoughts or inputs or something that you've heard on the command chief channels?
I think that the point there is, making sure that we're consistent.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's, coming up to this level at the wing level. So consistency and making sure that everything is done the same way across the board.
Yep. You bet. Yeah. So consistency is very, very important here because again, the number one metric I think on this is fairness to make sure that we've treated everyone exactly the same. You'll see in the ICD there's a clause there for civilians that choose not to get vaccinated and also choose not to pursue a religious or a medical, that there's also a provision in there that they can retire or separate. And the cutoff date for that is 1 April 2022. And so there's some more details in there specifically on how that works. But again, that's going to be a discussion between the employee, the supervisor, civilian personnel office. So again, not a quick process either, very deliberate process, but again, it's just to provide as many avenues as we can for people based on their situations in terms of what they would like to go do next. So that's the big kind of picture in terms of where we are at. Again, the number one thing at this point is just complete the 3176s and the 3177s. The rest of the process, that bridge will build as we start crossing it, and I don't want to get people too spooked out or excited about what that is. Again, like most other things that we've had to deal with in the pandemic, it's one of those things that we're just going to learn as we go along. And in all cases, we're not going to go fast on that. We're going to go very deliberate as we walk through that. The last thing I'll give you before kind of opening up to questions, and Chief just got back from a really fascinating place, and so maybe she'll share a little bit of what she learned and what she saw. But the last other piece I'll give you is the 3175s, right? So this was the form that civilians filled out way back in the beginning of November or so. What your units are doing right now is we're just making sure that we have everything set up in terms of what bucket, if you will, are you? Are you the fully vaccinated, group of people? Are you the partially vaccinated group of people? Are you the group of people seeking religious or medical exemptions or accommodations, et cetera, et cetera? What we're doing now is we're just making sure that everything is accounted for and that we can accurately account for every member of our civilian force and that those are uploaded into the right systems that are held either at AFMC or either Department of Defense, quite frankly, for one of the systems on there. So if you get any questions or any additional communications from your supervisor, specifically about your status, it's mainly for that reason. We are rapidly approaching that 22 November deadline, and so for all those reasons, you can imagine across the entire Department of Defense that there's a pretty loud demand signal for accuracy and reporting of the numbers. What's super important to emphasize here is you do not have the ability to decline what your response will be. At this stage of the game, after much oversight and review, it is absolutely imperative that we have the best status of our base. And so for that to occur, civilians must bring forward their vaccination status. And then what happens beyond there, again, is this process I just described. But it's important that we have accurate numbers because it's going to impact so many other things that happen post-22 November, mainly from a logistics standpoint of what happens next. In the coming weeks, what you will get is some guidance about how we are going to conduct the testing for those that chose to pursue the religious or the medical side, so that we have some way with which to still protect our force, still protect the workplace, but then also still live within the guidance that we have received, again, from senior command channels in terms of how are we going to test the force so that we can provide adequate safety environment, if you will, for people to work in. And that's going to include contractors. That's going to include visitors, i.e. people that are here TDY. So we're not talking about folks that are coming to your house, old friends. I mean, we're talking about people that have business at Edwards. They need recurring access to our facilities, and they're here on temporary duty, those types of things. And then also, again, it includes the government civilians that are here, permanent party, if you will, but proceeding down a religious or a medical process. So I don't have good information for you just quite yet. Believe me, every base is struggling with this. We are formulating our plan, and when it's ready, we will roll that out to you so that, again, we can be as transparent and open about what things look like. Okay, so with all of that put to the side, again, we just wanted to kind of front load the beginning of the podcast with that so that people have the most current relevant information that's going to be important for them. I'll pause there. Sergeant Nielsen, any questions come in just quite yet?
Yes, sir. I think we're addressing some of the lag on the feedback side.
Mm-hmm.
There was a question to ask on the rehash of 23 November and then religious accommodations. I think it was about the timeline into December and January.
Yep, you bet. So just to reemphasize, because again, I can appreciate the confusion or the angst or the stress that's going on in a lot of people right now. 22 November is the deadline for civilians to get vaccinated or to have submitted a package via religious or medical. And really what I'm saying is to submit a package, quote unquote, really what I'm saying is that you have made your intent known. Right, which really happened way back in the beginning of November when we were asking, hey, put in a memo, an email, signed email, something like that just declares your intent to file for a religious or a medical. And then when that process is revealed, that you intend to follow that process so that we can submit a valid package for you. So here's the way I kind of see it. On 22 November, we will have pretty good understanding of where our civilian force is. If you are a fully vaccinated person, quite frankly, that's probably the last time you'll ever hear from the U.S. government anything with respect to your COVID status because you're in a bucket of folks who are already in compliance with the POTUS guidance. After 22 November, you're going to be in this other bucket of people where we go, okay, there's additional work that needs to happen here. So that's where I'm saying, hey, now start that 3176 for your medical if you're in that bucket. Start your 3177 for religious if that's your bucket. And the deadline for when that is actually due, the form to fill out and to hand that back in, is 22 December. So again, please don't confuse that, hey, on 23 November, suddenly terrible things start happening to you from a discipline standpoint. That's not true. Really what happens is you're just in this group of people that we're just going to have to continue to work with to be able to complete the package and complete the process and give you the due rights as required by law. So 22 December is the next milestone for people that are in this bucket of I'm seeking a religious or a medical. And again, the expectation is that you would fill out those forms and then hand those in to your supervisor. And then the next iteration that happens beyond there, the next big milestone is 14 January, and that's the date where the expectation is that the supervisor has uploaded it to the right Air Force Material Command SharePoint site. So let me pause there. I think that answers the question, Jeremy, but let me know if we missed the mark and that we need some greater explanation.
Yes, sir. I think that's good. And then there was a follow-up question on, with the vaccination status, I know we're kind of waiting for California, but what are the updates on potential base access for outside of the military and civilian workers on base?
Got it. So the short answer is that we are still in HPCon Bravo. And so in Bravo, essentially, we're still in the mission essential, mission critical, ops necessary kind of buckets that we're very familiar with by this point. Retirees still only have access on Wednesdays, Saturdays and Sundays, and national holidays is where that stands right now. We look constantly at, hey, what are the conditions in Kern County, LA County, hospital beds, et cetera. Something relatively new for us is we also look and we go, what's the vaccination status of the people on the base? And so from an active military standpoint, we know that number very, very accurately, and it's really good. The number we're still trying to get our arms around, and this is why the need for a lot of accuracy with our civilian numbers is to understand our civilian population, which generally outnumbers our military population somewhere about 4 or 5 to 1. So that number, quite frankly, is probably the more important number for us to take a look at once we kind of get good confidence in what that number is. Then what we would do is we would look and go, okay, do we have any big potential events like holiday seasons or something where people kind of spread to the world and then they come back to Edwards? And, you know, it takes a little bit of time for the virus to gestate and then eventually start showing signs and symptoms. We look at our positivity rate on the base. We look at what goes on off base. And all those things wrap together to ultimately feed the decision of General Higer about which HPCon condition do we go to next. If everything goes normal, my hope, honestly, my hope is that we can get to HPCon Alpha. And then in HPCon Alpha, that then clears up the ability for base access, right, to the question that was posed to Sergeant Nielsen, where we can have retirees on, we can have, non-recurring access. So basically the base opens up again to kind of where, we used to be some time ago. There have been other bases across the country that have moved that way, but again, it's specific to just their context and their situation. And so right now we're kind of going through those same types of decisions right now here at Edwards about when is it appropriate to come out of Bravo and hopefully regress, or not regress, but to improve, and go to Alpha. So I think that's it. Chief, anything else to add on that, just from your experience and what you've seen and been a part of those conversations?
No, sir, nothing additional. That's pretty much it.
Okay, great. Sergeant Nielsen, any other questions come in?
No, sir.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is just a couple other things, just for kind of the general awareness of the base population. And then again, if Chief wanted to share just some observations or thoughts, we're happy to do it. And then, the entire time, we're happy to take your questions. The numbers are right there below, 707-412-8922. Text your question into that point, and then Sergeant Nielsen will be able to read it on air. And we can answer, again, in the interest of being as transparent and as open as we can with all of our viewers. So a couple things. One is we are in the middle of the housing survey. So this is predominantly for the people that live on the base. Again, this is your chance as a resident of the base to be able to impact how we spend about $12 million to reinvest back into our community. And I've been saying it for a while, but I'll say it one more time. It's not the dollar amount. In fact, I think that's pretty neat that we can have the authority to do $12 million. The thing that really keeps me awake at night is that if we're going to spend $12 million, is that $12 million spent exactly in the spot that residents really need it to make a difference? And the only way that we really know that is by your feedback on those housing surveys. So I'm looking. I'm telling you right now, the response rates are pretty good. So your neighbors are doing this, and I would certainly like to think that you would want to be a part of that as well. Mountain View and Josh Acres, you guys are lagging a little bit of the other residential communities. And again, I really want to make sure that if we're going to spend $12 million, we do it in a way that satisfies your equities as well over in Josh Acres and Mountain View. So jump in there. Don't get beat up by the other neighborhoods. Again, we still got a little bit of time left to fill those things out. But take a little bit of time on that. Again, it's all in the interest of how we make 93523 the best zip code in the U.S. Air Force. And there have been some great changes that have been made either in facilities, facility access, that we got out of the survey from last year that we worked with Corvius to then implement and then drive that out for this year. So this stuff really does matter. It has immediate impact. Again, I see all of the comments that are on there. And again, the whole point is if we've got $12 million to spend, help us spend it wisely on residential community kind of things. So that's my big announcement for everyone today. Any other questions coming, Jeremy?
No, sir.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so what I'd like to do, Chief, if you'd be so kind, just kind of share just kind of what you've been doing. I know it's been a while since we've seen you. You've had a chance to go off and do some cool things. And so, what'd you learn? What can you bring back to the community in terms of share, in terms of what you saw?
So I spent the last few days here in DC. I had the opportunity to attend an Africa seminar that was hosted by Alan L. Freed Associates. Very, very, very insightful. If you have no experience in the Africa regions, or if you're just curious about why Africa matters as we talk about accelerating change or lose, and some other strategic topics, Africa is definitely a key player, a key factor in that. And so as we are moving out with the book club, the current book that we're reading is The Kill Chain, and I know a lot of people have read that one. Chief Bass has plugged it many times, and I know our leadership here has read that. Talking about the points in that book, and then bridging in why Africa matters. We addressed everything from demographics to resources, and just, we went from A to Z on Africa, if you will. And so it was very, very insightful. So what I'd like to do is to be able to take some of those notes and take some of those contacts and the information that they've provided and kind of put together another forum for us to be able to discuss at a high level, why Africa matters the same way that we're doing with the Kill Chain. And so I hope to be able to get a lot of participation there with the help of Sergeant Nielsen and some other folks around the base to just kind of give us that opportunity to kind of dig into those topics at those levels. I think airmen at every level need to be aware, for one thing, and then to be able to openly discuss that. I think this is that opportunity to do that. So I look forward to putting something together so that we can start going through that.
Yeah, very neat, very cool. So in previous town halls, we had Air Force Gaming here for instance last time, and we had this really wonderful discussion about why we want to recruit airmen into the Air Force that are digitally savvy and can understand the linkages and are innovators by default, right, and are able to lead out even at very junior ranks, but to be trusted with some really important kind of things, because quite frankly, that's the strategic environment that we exist in now, which is that we can't really have airmen that are just super specialized on one thing and don't kind of get the larger perspective. And as an Air Force, we need to make sure that we've created the environment in which our airmen can showcase those talents as well. In a similar vein, even beyond just the digital space and the metaverse conversations that we had and innovation, the tech, a lot of the talks that we had in those lines, is understanding the larger geostrategic narrative of the times that we exist in now. We were having a discussion. We do this from time to time, and I'll tell you what, it's a nice break from COVID because it kind of expands your mind a little bit in terms of what else is happening in the world. Mm-hmm. But essentially, the discussion I was having with some of our trusted colleagues was when I grew up as a kid, the strategic environment, although scary, ridiculously scary because of the threat of imminent nuclear war at all times with the Soviet Union, but the environment itself was well understood. It was one big power versus another big power. Both powers, if you will, had a similar technology acquisition. They were easy to understand. It was a very staid environment. where it was just basically a bipolar world is the technical term for it. And then when the Soviet Union collapsed in the early 90s, we kind of went into this weird transition period that ultimately resulted in where we are at now, which is it is super multipolar. And oh, by the way, any one of those particular powers, if you will, in the world, whereas before, if it wasn't the Soviet Union or the United States of America, quite frankly, it was just a proxy of those. Now it's pretty impressive to see just how much events in one part of the world can rapidly, go out of control, if you will, and suddenly have impact globally because we're much more interconnected in ways that we were not before. Strategically, it's much more tenuous. So for all those reasons, whereas before you're like, at the continent of Africa, I totally get it, whatever. Oh no, that is a ginormous player now, mainly because of a lot of different inroads that we have with different countries and also the different power dynamics that are inherent internal to Africa. So for all those reasons, that's why Chief was talking about, book club, leaders or readers, those sorts of things. How do we get airmen that now if I have this innovative, technically savvy airman, how do I then make them very savvy on the world so that they understand the environment that we as soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardians, Marines, that we're going to have to play in and be a part of because it's our role to be expeditionary and to be essentially very knowledgeable about what's going on in the world. So I'll pause there for a second. Sergeant Nielsen, because I know that you've got a lot of great thoughts on this. Any additional thoughts in terms of just things that you've observed or things that you've thought about this topic?
To be honest, sir, I would have to say that having the opportunity to work with wing staff really gives you a broader perspective, and I'm really excited to be part of the effort to share that with the groups and the squadrons and help them appreciate just how impactful and significant not only their role is, but their perception on how they're part of this inherently. And I really hope to have the opportunity as we go forward with this to get your guys' genuine feedback and to optimistically be able to find the middle ground where it makes the most sense for us as a consensus, not in a directive sense, but us as an organization and as an enterprise.
Yeah, very cool, man. Thanks, Sergeant Nielsen. I really appreciate chatting with you, and I always love chatting with you on these types of topics. So in the meantime, any additional questions come in while we were waiting?
Yes, sir. There was one asked for a follow-up on AIP.
Yeah. The dreaded AIP, yep. So we are still awaiting. I know that's frustrating, and that's not the answer that you want to hear. It's not the answer I want to hear either. AIP, for those who are not tracking what that is the assignment incentive pay or assignment incentive package. It goes by a couple different terms, but essentially it means more or less the same thing. There are certain spots in the country where bases that are located there, to make it a little bit more palatable to attract the right talent, they have assignment incentives, if you will, that go along with it. Many months ago, we applied for that. We put together a great package that went up via our command channels. It was pushed out from Air Force Materiel Command, ended up at the Pentagon, and it's still kind of in that spot at the Pentagon trying to get adjudicated. So, again, I'm with you. I would love to be able to hear back on that. I just don't have anything as of yet in terms of what the actual adjudication was, whether or not it was thumbs up or thumbs down. Chief, have you heard anything specific, like on your travels coming back, and that come up at all?
No, sir, I do not have any updates. I just hope that, because it's taking such a while, that it wasn't a quick no and it's returned, that they're actually looking at it and reading what we've provided as justification. And if it's not going to be approved, I hope that at the very least they can give us the way ahead on what we can do for our airmen and guardians here. As we bring in new mission sets and, housing is kind of lacking in terms of capacity. Inventory is low off base, all these gas prices and other factors that kind of go against, the airmen or personnel here, military and civilian. I hope that we can at least get some type of way ahead to see what we can do. Essentially, that's what it boils down to. So, fingers crossed that maybe soon that we'll get an answer. I will continue to follow up. I think we've been doing that quite well. It's just a matter of the approval authority making that decision and getting that back to us.
Yep. So, the one thing I can safely say beyond a shadow of a doubt is your senior leadership, and that's even beyond just Edwards. That's Air Force Test Center. That's Air Force Materiel Command. They have been very, very tenacious about pushing these sorts of things up. because we can appreciate that, Edwards, it's one of those places where it's a spectacularly cool mission. And oh, by the way, the people that serve here are spectacularly cool as well. And so what can we wrap around that to make it even more of an incentive for people to come out here? This being one of many different initiatives that are currently on the table that we're pushing up. So as we get more information, we'll be the first to share it. To Chief's point, it is also my hope as well that the fact that it is taking some time means that people are giving it the right amount of diligence. Because the easy thing is to say no and just move on because of everything else we got trying to take care of right now. But the fact that people are asking questions about it and going back and forth and being deliberate about it, most likely, that's probably a good indication that they're at least giving it proper due, right? Proper due. Okay.
Agreed.
What else?
Nothing else at the moment, sir.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm looking at the clock here. We'll let it go for about another 5 minutes or so, and if people are good to go, then we can start the weekend. But again, I just wanted to just emphasize the timelines that we're looking at now with respect to COVID in terms of the vaccination part of it. Again, we heard many times, people's kind of concerns. We had a town hall on this. General Heiger was there in person. And believe me, we chat a lot with your commanders, with your directors of operations, with your superintendents, your shirts, your chiefs, mainly just to kind of get that feedback from the field in terms of what questions people have. And how can we help demystify what's up? I will tell you, just kind of being in the right conversations and kind of seeing how this is impacting the force as a whole, that Edwards by far is not alone, that a lot of the same questions and concerns that people have here are shared by many different units across many different bases across the U.S. Air Force. And so in a way, it's a way with which to kind of funnel those concerns up to our most senior leaders. And again, I can tell you, again, having been in the room where it happens, so to speak, that they hear it loud and clear, and they have been fierce advocates as well to make sure that we're rolling this out, again, with the professionalism, the urgency, but also the compassion part of it. So I have not observed anywhere along the way people trying to be roughshod with this. If anything, I've heard people advocate and go, hey, to be fair to the force, to be able to explain this, to be transparent, how do we, in other words, it's been very, very fascinating, interesting dialogues about how best can we roll this out and do it in a fair, equitable, compassionate way, but also mindful of the fact that we are in the middle of great power strategic competition right now. With respect to TLE, so this one, so we've asked this question directly. It's called the Air Force Civil Engineering Center, AFCEC. Or excuse me, this is a IMSE kind of thing. And so on this one, just so that everyone's tracking on what this is, way over through the summer and into the fall, there was an issue of airmen that were having to live in the TLFs because they were waiting for a house to come available. And they were in the TLF for an extended period of time that the rates that they were being charged were so high that they were well beyond what they would have paid had they just received a home. And especially at the junior enlisted ranks, we were, as a service, right? Well, really as a military, right? Because it's larger than just the Air Force. We were in positions in which we were putting young junior enlisted in severe financial issues. We were inconveniencing everyone, but especially at the junior enlisted ranks, it was especially acute in terms of the financial impact. That was alleviated by the directive that came down that said, hey, we're going to change the rates that you're charged to essentially be 1/30 of your housing allowance, such that essentially by the end of the month, you were charged whatever your housing allowance was based on your rank. And so that immediately kind of took the pressure off from a financial standpoint. And that came out about August timeframe or so is when that arrived. It wasn't retroactive, so it was only from that day and then going forward. But there was an expiration date on it. And that date comes due in early January of 2022. And so knowing that, we started asking some questions to our senior leadership about, hey, do we have an update where this is at? How's it going? What's the next thing that kind of comes out of that? And so far, I don't have a good answer for you as of yet, other than to say that it is being discussed. It is understood as a quality of life, a retention kind of initiative, and that we do owe the force an answer in terms of what happens after we cross our expiration date in January about what that means. So again, a very good question, a question that has already been asked, because again, this is beyond the purview and authority of the installation commander. This isn't a General Higer thing. This is an Air Force thing. It's really a Department of Defense thing that we've been advocating and pushing for, saying, hey, we don't want to repeat what happened over summer and in the fall. So how do we go about that a little smarter such that we can get the right guidance out and allow airmen to financially plan out in front of that? So again, as we get more information, we will be the first to share it. And if that happens, even if we haven't had a town hall by that point, believe me, that will be emailed out and distributed to all the members so that people know what to expect so that they can plan accordingly. Chief, have you heard anything else or anything different than that?
No, I've heard rumblings about hoping there's an extension on the way, but I've not seen anything official on that yet. So it requires another follow-up, if you will. So
Yep.
I'll be digging into that with AFMC level command chiefs.
And again, that expands beyond just Edwards. Every base will experience that. We feel it a little bit more acutely here just because of the housing market dynamics and the lack of housing on the base. And so for all those reasons, we'll continue to shout as loud as we can for updated guidance. And then the moment we have that, believe me, we will be the first ones to share that because we can appreciate that has impact to a lot of our airmen that are awaiting a home right now and living in the TLF.
I know all the MATCHCOM command chiefs just got out of AFSELC with Chief Bass, SimSAF, and so they're probably going to be giving us all the updates on many things to include that one. So hopefully we'll get something here soon.
Yep. Cool. Good question, though. Thank you for that.
I got a couple phone a friend, sir.
Okay.
So CE wanted us to know that the HRMA team was already here and that they'll be hoping to get that report in January, which speaks to what we were just talking about with lodging and TLE.
So let me pause there. Thanks for bringing that up, Sergeant Nielsen. So again, back to the original comment of there are a number of things that are on the table to improve quality of life and to make 93523 one of the great zip codes, right, of the U.S. Air Force. One of them is, and we've talked about this on numerous town halls before, is the shortage of homes that exist on Edwards Air Force Base. In my first assignment here, there were around 2,000 homes. And we were in a scenario in which when you arrived on base, you would be handed keys to 3 homes and you had to choose one. Now we're in the world of you arrive and there's no homes available and you have to wait several months, right? So just in the 15 years or so when the old housing was demolished and the new houses were put up, and now we're kind of in this scenario with everything that's happened off base with the housing market. For all those reasons, we get it. We understand. We know exactly, hey, we do not have sufficient housing on this base. And so the HRMA it's basically a team that shows up from larger Department of Defense, if you will. And their whole goal is to come out and to survey and to see the housing situation and then to be able to make recommendations in terms of what happens next in terms of being able to construct more homes, or if there's changes that are necessary, if you will, to housing allowances, those sorts of things. We had a great engagement with them when they were here. They drove all over the place from almost as far north as Red Rocks kind of area to as far west as Tehachapi, as far east as just a little bit outside of Boron, excuse me, and then as far south as Lake Los Angeles and all kind of points in between. And we are confident, 100% confident that we think that they saw it as it was, right? No sugarcoating, no additional fluff put on top of it. They saw the reality of just the housing situation that our airmen have to deal with. And we believe that they're going to be great advocates in terms of getting us the right amount of advocacy to be able to make the changes that need to happen here on Edwards Air Force Base so that we can get more homes and different types of living arrangements, if you will, for our airmen. So that happened earlier. I think that was October timeframe is when that occurred. They're in the process of drafting up their report. We'll see that. And then that's really the first step in what happens next, right, in terms of getting additional housing on the base. So I'll pause there, but thanks for bringing that up, about that. Chief, anything else to add on there?
No, sir. We just hope to see the results soon in January time frame and go from there.
Yep, wonderful. Okay, so what was the other phone a friend? Sorry, I just wanted to...
No worries, sir.
Because that was an important one.
Yes, sir. The other phone a friend was about the Dod Spouses Survey. So you can access it on dodsurvey.mil, or if you go on Facebook, SimSAF's wife, Shireen Brown, she has it on her page as well. But essentially, the point of the survey is to give DoD spouses the opportunity to give their feedback on how they feel about military benefits, family, childcare, those kinds of things, to make sure that we're making sure everyone has the opportunity to be heard as we move forward in the new year.
Yep, wonderful. Hey, thanks for the phone a friend. Thanks for reading that as well, Jeremy. So we've actually had Miss Shireen Brown out here on Edwards. They came out, when General Brown came to visit us as well. And it was clear, right, for all that engaged with her that this is a lady who understands it, who gets it, who has a heart for spouses, dependents, etc. Because again, this is just my observation. It doesn't matter how cool or interesting the fighter jet is on the line. If your family is not with you on this, then very quickly you will also not be with the U.S. Air Force much longer beyond that point. And so we understand that it is a team effort, that not just the serving member, but the serving member's family that needs to be valued, appreciated, understood, supported, resourced appropriately. Because if that's not there, then there's fractures in that family unit, and then that suddenly starts cascading to the serving member. And very quickly, we lose that talent, we lose that ability, it goes out the door. So for all those reasons, again, thanks for the phone a friend on that. And then by all means, please provide that feedback into the spouse survey. Okay, what else?
Good to go, sir.
All right, outstanding. So I'm looking at the clock here. We're almost at the top of the hour, and I think that's all the topics that I at least wanted to cover. Chief, anything else that you wanted to kind of bring up?
I'll just do a quick plug. Again, we're doing the book club. The first month is November, and our first book is The Kill Chain by Christian Bros. We have a Teams page if you want to get on as the month goes on. We're actually doing a little bit of back and forth dialogue on there. I actually owe some responses, so I have not forgotten about you all that have been commenting on that. If you've read the book already and you would like to provide some input and some perspective, please share with us. And then 30 November is when we will be getting together to do virtual / in-person at the theater up to 50 to kind of talk through the book and talk about why all of the stuff in that book matters. And so, yeah, just a quick plug.
Wonderful. Now, that's good stuff. Thank you, Chief. Sergeant Nielsen, anything else on your side?
If you could, sir, can you discuss or recap the COVID mandate due to the dates, so that since there's been technical difficulties, so that way everyone understands the timeline?
Yeah, it's no worries. So one last just plug for that, just so that people understand. I appreciate the question, and so it's important. That's why we wanted to devote this town hall specifically to this topic. So if I march down the calendar, the next date that we're going to cross is 22 November. And that's the date in which either a civilian is fully vaccinated or they have submitted paperwork in about seeking a medical exemption or religious accommodation. So if you're not in one of those buckets and we cross through 22 November, there's more to follow in terms of kind of what happens. But just understand that the expectation as passed from POTUS via SecDef down to SecAF, all the way across the entire U.S. Air Force, is 22 November is the cutoff date. So that's essentially next Monday is where that comes down. If you are in the bucket of folks who are seeking a medical exemption or religious accommodation, the next milestone that becomes important is 22 December. So that's a month out basically from next Monday. And in that time, the expectation is that you would have completed the 3176 form. That's the form that talks about medical exemption, if that's the process that you're going down. That one is going to require not only your input, but the input of a medical provider that will have to be off base because our med group isn't authorized to provide medical care to our civilians. So that date is 22 December. The other thing is the 3177. That's the religious form. And on that form, it's essentially a self-interview where you are answering a series of questions there, basically about the sincerity and the belief that you hold. Although it's not required, if you would like to provide additional input from your clergy, you absolutely can do that on there. It's not required, it's optional, but it just provides a little bit more context and background if you think it's going to make your waiver package stronger. Both of those things, either whichever side you're on, if you're on the medical exemption side or if you're on the religious accommodation side, 22 December is your next milestone date. 14 January is the date for your supervisors to have done the interviews if it's necessary, and then to be able to submit that package ultimately up to Air Force Materiel Command. And then beyond 14 January is the rest of the stuff I was describing, which isn't fully formed out just quite yet. But it's going to look like an intake team that reviews the completeness of the package, make sure that everything is there before it then goes to this exemption review team, the ERT. And the ERT's purpose is essentially to review the package and then to make a recommendation to the approval authority. And then the approval authority then is held at the installation level, basically at the test wing commander level in terms of either thumbs up or thumbs down. There is a appeal process for that. Again, this all takes some time here in terms of what's going to happen next. For civilians that choose not to get vaccinated and choose not to proceed down to religious or medical, there is the option in there to separate from civil service or retire from civil service, but you have to do that by 1 April of 2022. And again, all of this is in the ICD that was released earlier this week. We're just trying to provide a little bit of voice track on top of that. So again, 22 November, the deadline as established by POTUS for vaccination of civilians. If you're not in that boat, then you need to have a religious or a medical package submitted in. The next date, 22 December, for you to complete your part of that process in terms of going a religious or medical, and then 14 January. So those are the next milestone dates that are coming down the calendar. Okay, anything else come in?
You're good, sir.
All right, wonderful. So with that, again, I wanted to thank Sergeant Nielsen. I wanted to thank Chief Ward Swanigan for joining me here today. And we wanted to wish everyone out there happy holidays. This has been an interesting year, I think, for all of us. And I've learned, especially in this role, that when you have downtime with family to just kind of relax and recharge, that you ought to take that very, very seriously and to be very deliberate about how you spend your quote-unquote free time. So my family and I will be hanging out here on Edwards Air Force Base. The airmen, you'll see us over at the Chow Hall. That's one of our most favorite things to go do, is to go serve food to our airmen that are over there. I really appreciate the work that happens over at our DFAC to make all that come together. It's a wonderful time from there. And then we intend to just relax and have a really good time, put up some decorations, and just kind of enjoy. And root for the Cowboys. Speak for yourself, Chief. But yeah, beyond that, we wanted to wish everyone very, very happy Thanksgiving. And to take that time to just really enjoy that time with your family, to recharge. And then especially as we go into the holiday season, this is always an interesting time in the Air Force between Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's a time for reflection, and I've always enjoyed this particular time of the year. So with that, have a good weekend, and there will be no Town Hall next week because that will be over the holiday weekend, and we'll see you the week after that. And with that, we'll see you next time.